Right, so hello, my name's James Potter. So I'm a sort of fairly recently qualified design engineer. I went through my apprenticeship through Marshall, started in 2015. Before I joined my apprenticeship, I'll go through a few of the things I did beforehand. So after school, I went to Fakenham College and did some A-levels. Didn't do very well in my A-levels because I didn't know what best to pick. So I think I did music, graphic design and ICT, which didn't go too well. But luckily, not doing well in those sort of made me readjust my career thinking. And I moved on to an engineering BTEC on the College of West Anglia, which was a lot better. And doing that helped me sort of figure out what path I wanted to take in my career. Alongside that, I was in Air Cadets for, I think, 8 years in total. So I was doing a lot of really fun things, sort of pushing myself, gaining social skills and all that. So what I've done with these slides is putting this together sort of last minute has made me realize how many photos I've lost throughout various years. So I've filled it with as many relevant photos from each sort of year as I can. So on the left, I've got my best design I've ever made of the opening Pringles tube, which I did in my design A-level. And then I got a few pictures from my time in Air Cadets when we sort of entertained some children from Chernobyl, which was really cool. So my first year at Marshall Aerospace. So interestingly, I found out about the apprenticeship via a very drunk man at the pub I used to work at. And he told me about Marshall and I applied and I got in. So I did my aptitude tests and everything, amazingly got through, did my meetings. And then in 2015, we joined and we met everyone. So I met sort of all my friends who I'm still friends with today. We still work together, moved to Cambridge. So I think I was around 18 when I joined, and it was the first time I've ever moved out of my home. So I moved into Cambridge, moved in with a couple of apprentices, which is okay. It was a very interesting sort of adjustment we had to make, looking after ourselves. And I think it's an interesting thing, parallel with university, where you have to sort of fend for yourself, and it's quite an interesting change. In the first year, we started our level 3 BTEC, which I had a bit of an advantage because the BTEC I did beforehand was very similar. So I had a few units already. So I only had to do, I think, 4 in total, where the rest had 6. So that was quite good. And that was a 2-year course. And that's sort of the same level as A-levels, if anyone doesn't know. We also started our training in the workshop. So as many of you will know, in our apprenticeship, we have a really good workshop where we learn sort of basic hand skills for mostly mechanical maintenance. So we start from filing pieces of steel to eventually at the end of it building a whole wing section out of aluminium, so fully forming it, riveting it and everything, going through the arduous process of being judged by our tutors, then marking them for having tiny scratches on, which was nice and fun. It was a really fun time. It was a really fun year because we got to know each other, and it was that kind of settling period of learning how to look after ourselves, learning how to do everything, and learning what was in store for us sort of through the years. So year 2 was arguably a more interesting year for us. So once we finished in the training centre, we went out into the hangars. So during my time of the apprenticeship, it was a bit different, where no matter what route you went down. So I went down initially, I joined as a craft apprentice, which means I would have been destined for working in the hangars. But all of us went out into the hangars, started doing aircraft work. We worked with mentors in the hangars to do aircraft maintenance. So we started off doing basic sealant scraping, the sort of less interesting jobs, but we were trusted to do them. And eventually sort of worked our way up to being trusted and doing some more interesting things. Alongside that, I finished the BTEC in level 2 in year 2. That was good. Again, that was one of those things where the courses you do alongside are always quite challenging because you've got to juggle it with the other sides of your life, but it definitely helps you sort of organize things. I also joined LaunchPad in year 2. So they did a presentation for us quite early on, so introduced what LaunchPad was in the good company, and I was really interested in sort of doing STEM events for schools, helping children out, because for me personally, I didn't get much introduction into engineering before I actually found out about apprenticeships myself. So it's important to me that we get that message out. I also, so in my sort of spare time, another thing that was interesting to develop was, you always think about sort of, the work side of things and the apprenticeship side of things, but also the downtime was important for us as well, because again, most of us, we've only just moved out. We're all learning to look after ourselves. and we found that there wasn't much to do in the afternoons. We had to sort of build that up for ourselves. So for me personally, I like doing a lot of things, and I found Makerspace, which is this really cool lab in Cambridge where you pay monthly. It's like a gym for nerds. It's great. They've got 3D printers, laser cutters, and everything. So I've done some really cool projects with them, and I sort of used to go there before COVID. Used to go there sort of every week to get some projects done. So that was cool. I also used to play the piano, so I found the piano in the Grand Arcade. Used to go play that every week. That was very exciting. And yeah, so it definitely helped sort of develop our sort of time after work. In that year, we also did Dove Nest. So I don't know whether they still do it on the apprenticeship, but for us, we did it was a sort of long team building exercise for over a couple of days where we went down to the Lake District, which was really cool. And we did this mass series of team building, team destroying exercises. So where we had to build rafts as teams, we had to, what else did we have to do? We had to build bridges, we had to build like tube mechanisms. We also had to do this really interesting exercise where within our groups, we had to pick out, I think it was 2 good things and 2 sort of criticisms of each other, or sort of constructive criticisms. And that was a very interesting experience because you know, you don't usually get that kind of forced interaction with each other, and it does make you think about sort of how you come across and what kind of personality traits come across to other people. So that was really interesting, and as a whole that event was really entertaining. It was nice to be in the Lake District as well. Also that year I played in the band. So when I was in Air Cadets, I joined Cambridge Air Cadets in my second year, and it was a 75th anniversary of Air Cadets, and we played songs to, I think it was 5,000 people in total, and Carol Balderman was there. And then we were preceded by the Red Arrow, so that was really exciting. Then coming to year 3, so this is when things got a bit more sort of intense. So hangar work became more intense because we were trusted with more. So rather than scraping sealant all the time, we were doing full-on replacements of hydraulic systems, which I found really exciting, as well as, you know, various other mechanical maintenance, or, you know, drilling into sheet metal, completely replacing a wing skin or a fuselage skin, and just developing those sort of core skills to make you, and you start sort of by the end of it, you start to actually feel really confident about what you know, and what training you've had. And you start to feel like, you know, oh, I'm an engineer now. So what else happened? Also with LaunchPad and various other things, we did a lot of careers fairs, and they were really interesting. And again, that sort of helped spark my interest in STEM events. So going to schools, showing what Marshall does, what we offer as an apprenticeship. And it's really interesting to talk to children who are in that stage of life deciding what to do, especially when they go to you, oh, I've never heard of an apprenticeship, or I see an apprenticeship as sort of a lower end than a degree, which I think a lot of people still have. And I noticed we went to the Perth school, which is sort of more of a private school, and they often have sort of more parents walking around as well. And all the parents should come to us. They're always very skeptical about the apprenticeships. And I always found that really disappointing, because the apprenticeship shouldn't be, you know, something that's less than a degree, because I'm doing my degree with, you know, through my apprenticeship now. But it's just a different phase of learning, and it's just a different way of doing things if you're not necessarily academic. Like, I'm not really an academic person. Also in that year, I made the big decision of leaving Air Cadet. So I got to a point where I was a staff member for a while, and I had 8 years behind me, and I was enjoying it, but there was just sort of something missing. And I think when you become staff, it's not as fun anymore, because you get a lot of responsibility. And I did it for a long time. And I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not enjoying this as much as I used to, and I feel like I could sort of move on to new things, and maybe I'll go back to it one day. But that's sort of what spanned into my sort of LaunchPad involvement more recently. I also attended some really exciting events. So through my apprenticeship, I feel very lucky, because I've had a lot of opportunities to do some really exciting things. So we went to the DSEI event, which is basically the massive, essentially arms fair in London, held at the Excel building. And it's basically this ridiculously large complex. Each room has a different country in it. These companies come to represent what they provide. So there was a company which had these really intricate robotic hands. There's less interested, you know, missiles and things, but it was there. And it was just very fascinating to see how different countries come across as well. The American section had literally a table full of guns that you could try and hold, whereas other businesses sort of focused on other areas. And it was also a bit scary to see there's a lot of unmanned drones with weapons on, which is not of a good sight to see. But it was still really interesting from an engineering point of view, because you get to see what future technology is coming up and what you can get involved in. Because another thing that I found on my apprenticeship is it takes a long time to figure out what avenue you want to go down, which I'm sure is the same with most careers. And I'm still not entirely sure what I want to do, but it sort of helped push me down the sort of product development route, I think. Yeah, the other important thing, I switched to design. So when I joined my apprenticeship, I was a craft apprentice, which meant I was down in a hangar. And I very quickly realized that actually I wanted to be more on the design side of things. So I wanted to actually design or innovate and create new things, whereas maintenance was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I just found, for my personal interests, I really wanted to learn how to actually design these things myself. So I luckily was very lucky, and I was able to switch, even though I didn't have the right A levels for it. They allowed me to switch over to design apprenticeship, which was amazing. So then the fourth year, which is essentially sort of the last year of the apprenticeship, we started our HNC. So that's with the design side. You start in my apprenticeship, you did HNC sort of fairly late on, and then you moved on to degree once you qualified. And that was interesting. That was a sort of steeper learning curve, but some of the things we learned were really exciting. I went to Morocco, so that was fun. I went on my sort of first ever holiday on my own. So it was one of these kind of like packaged tours, but I went completely on my own with a load of random people, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. And as you can see, that's me on a dromedary, not a camel, and they stink. I also did a lot of more LaunchPad events. So my involvement in that increased because my cadet side is gone, and that sort of made me a lot happier because I was doing things that I was actually really interested in. And LaunchPad, we do some really cool activities, and I actually got a chance, as you see sort of in the latest slide, where I actually helped design one of the activities, which I've got a video of later. I did game jam, so this is a very, very sort of me thing. This is basically 2 days where you meet up with random people and you essentially make a game. And I don't really have any game making skills. I have basic programming, but it was really fun because we met some engineers from around Cambridge, and we just generated this game based on the word waves, and we made a penguin surfing game, which was quite cool. I also started dancing, so I found another sort of hobby in Lindy Hop dancing. I don't do it anymore, obviously, because of COVID, but it was one of these things where it really got me out of my comfort zone, to say the least. I also completed my MVQ, so I think I forgot to mention, in the second year in the hangars, we started our level 3 MVQ, also known as the bane of my life, because although it's a really good qualification to have, it's a very hard one to do when you were relying on very specific jobs out in the hangar. And there was just this period where we were all battling to get the right jobs out for our MVQ. Once the MVQ was completed, I then essentially not qualified. We went on to the sort of next phase where I had a year of rotations around design. So that's just kind of year 4.5, 2019. I rotated around some really exciting engineering departments. So I went around repairs, composites, mechanical fluid systems, tech pubs, and stress. And those really helped me to decide what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. I designed and built a LaunchPad event. So as you can see, Chris Botting's bottom here is the start of the video. I'll just show this because this is the event we designed, and it was a firefighting robot. Hopefully everyone can see that and hear that. That's my voice. Could everyone see that okay? Or was it just static?
No, it was moving. I could see it.
Excellent. Thank you. So yeah, that event was, we designed it. It was based off, so you may notice in the top corner, I've put in a linked picture of one of my favorite projects, which I do in my spare time, which is I make little robots, and it's called Twerpy. I don't know why. And through the years, I sort of iterate it, and it gets better and better due to my sort of increased engineering knowledge. And I got really excited because I got to use that in LaunchPad, and we created this event. And the idea was, what I wanted to do was bring a sense of what engineering actually is to children, because we do a lot of events where, it's build a bridge or do this, but there's not a lot of context to it in terms of what a job actually involves. And so the way I designed this was, the main bulk of it was they got a electronic schematic and they had to put a breadboard circuit together, which was the robot. But then the other side of it is they had a load of forms. So they had to actually, book out all the parts they needed. We introduced stock changes. So at one point, yellow wires became obsolete and they had to swap them out. What else happened? We also had a couple of courses run. So they had to send their people off to do courses, and it made it really exciting. And so the end goal was the robot would have to drive through the obstacle course and put out the quote unquote aircraft fire, which was a candle on a 3D printed hook, which was very exciting. And I think it went really well. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we couldn't run it last year, or well, probably not this year. So hopefully once things get back to normal, we can start doing those sort of more fun ones again. Also in 2019, so I did REAT, so a massive event. We did the actual REAT event, really exciting. I think it was 2 days out the table, quite exhausting, talking to people, but really interesting. We had all sorts of people come up to us. We had children, adults, extremely high profile engineering people. It was just a very fascinating event, and it was really cool because we got to see all the aircraft displayed, and we got to join the chalet and have a very nice meal, which made it a bit nicer as well. And also I met my girlfriend Ellie in 2019. That was very good. And then, and I joined a charity called Remap, which is where engineers can join and help, basically help disabled people who can't necessarily get to the facilities they need. So for example, one of the things I'm working on at the moment is there's a little 9-year-old boy who's deaf and blind, and they don't offer blindness canes that reduce noise interference. So I'm helping to design a cane end that can reduce that frequency, hopefully. So my career so far, so now I'm qualified. After doing my rotations, I decided to settle in mechanical fluid systems. So that was focusing on sort of MATLAB data analysis, simulation models, those kind of things. That's what really interests me, is the sort of computer side of engineering, and how we can simulate really complex devices just on a computer nowadays, especially with machine learning and deep learning coming through, which is one of my passions. I'm very excited to sort of integrate that into engineering. So I've recently joined the product development team, which is quite new. That was spanning from joining the HUMS project. So the picture you see is my very luckily successful installation of a sensor system onto our HVAC, so our air conditioning system, as we're trying to offer a predictive maintenance system for land systems containers. So we're really excited to get that going. We also did REACT 2020 was less interactive than the previous one. So me and another apprentice, Matt Garland, we hosted a live show, which some of you may have watched. So that was quite exciting. That definitely pushed us out of our comfort zone for sure. Some of the skills I picked up also in my very short time being qualified, I've learned 3D printing. So I actually bought my own 3D printer as well because of that. So I've got a lot of plastic lying around. 3D scanning, which is really cool. So scanning in 3D objects, and actually using that alongside 3D printing can really help to create prototypes for various projects, which is brilliant. Machine learning, again. So one of my latest robots projects is I finally got a machine learning algorithm to pick out people in video, which is really exciting. So I'm hoping to make use of that. And programming, which is sort of my skill that I keep ending up having to use everywhere, which is fairly interesting. And of course, in 2020, we all know the big event of COVID-19 derailed a lot of things, but everything's going okay. We're surviving. And then sort of my final sort of thing. So LaunchPad, recently I became the lead of LaunchPad, sort of a bit accidentally. A guy took over in early 2020. And then he left the company sort of 3 months later, and it kind of fell onto me. So I've kind of taken it up as much as I can. And it's interesting because normally every year we have quite a set routine of activities we can offer. And as I showed with that video, some of the activities are very practical. And the challenge this year has been we're not able to actually do those events. So I've been in talks with Form the Future, who own LaunchPad now. And we're developing some really exciting virtual events, which hopefully we can start offering sort of late mid-March. And we've got some other events coming up, so virtual careers fairs, those kind of things. So hopefully that really sort of brings it back. And it's very important to me that we sort of give all these resources to children because they're missing out on so much this year and last year. So we need to sort of boost that sort of learning and skills development as much as we can, really. But yeah, that's it, I think. And this is most importantly the development of my favorite project through the years. Now it's solar powered, which is quite exciting. But yes, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions?
That was really interesting, James. My name's John Perrin. I was an apprentice with Marshall's as well, so I can relate to some of what you're talking about. And you've got a natural enthusiasm there for engineering, and you can't buy that enthusiasm, and that's why you're going to be a success there. And just what you're saying, there's certain things you're incorporating your personal life into bits and pieces you do at work. That's why the enthusiasm's there, and you just can't beat that.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I think that's sort of one thing I notice is I find it, if I'm really interested in what I'm doing, it really helps sort of develop my work. And that's why I'm really happy that I'm on the product development team, because it's basically my sort of dream position, because I get to use my sort of hobby skills in work, which is quite cool.
No, that's very good. Is that a new department that's just started up, James?
Yeah, literally. So it started up at the start of this year. So we're in very early stages, sort of coming up with some product routes to go down.
Have you got Jack Nichols on that team?
We have, yes.
Yeah. I was just talking to him this morning because I knew he'd been involved a little bit with the technical support group, and then he said, "Oh, I'm on this development team now." And we were just talking just a couple of hours ago about it, so I could relate to a lot of what you were saying there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Tim's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. Thanks, James. Really interesting. I loved, as JP said, just loved the general enthusiasm for your subject. I suppose the question was around twerpy. Obviously, you're pretty passionate about that.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas as to how that could be applied going forward?
Oh, good question. So this is one of these things where twerpy came as, and this is going to sound like a load of rubbish, but before I started in Marshall, I actually had a dream about this robot, and that's why I decided to design it the way I did. So it's literally just been this ongoing project where it doesn't really have a use, as it were. I'm kind of using it as a device to teach myself new things. So when I first made it, it was, as you saw from the pictures, I'll show you. Go back. So the first one was literally made of a Tupperware box, half of an ice cream tub, and some roofing aluminium and various other bits. And then I sort of slowly developed over time to laser cutting and then 3D printing to what I've got now, which is sort of much more advanced than the first one. In terms of sort of uses, and again, it's one of those things where I think it will just develop naturally. So like the LaunchPad thing, I didn't really think about that when I was first designing it, but it kind of just came naturally. Oh, I could use my, design to provide STEM activities and that kind of thing. So we'll see, I think. Depends what. So the next sort of stage is I'm working on a lot of machine learning for it. So obstacle detection, people detection, and being able to sort of run functions when it sees certain things. So we'll see, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you. I personally, I like the idea of just having ways that you can go and explore without necessarily having a defined end objective. I think that's exactly. That's a nice approach. So yeah, good luck with it.
No, thanks very much.
Hi James, it's Liz. Are you all right?
Hello Liz, long time no speak. How are you?
Yeah, that was brilliant. I loved it. For everyone's benefit, I've known James. He was in my first intake when I was in what used to be formerly Aero Academy. So I saw James all the way through his apprenticeship, and he's a remarkable young man. But James, we have got some of our first years on this call today. What bit of advice would you give them for sort of tackling their apprenticeship and sort of career progression through Marshall?
I think the best thing I noticed, well, this is a kind of potentially poison chalice, is say yes to everything, even if it doesn't look like it's going to be a lot of fun, because that's how I sort of got the opportunities to have, where I, like this, I've been asked to do this. I said yes. And it is very interesting just to sort of put yourself out there and do things. But also just, have fun. I think that's the main thing, is don't take everything too seriously and just sort of develop yourself, find what you find interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the reasons James was chosen for REACT was because of his enthusiasm for engineering and his contribution sort of to the business as such by, STEM events, careers events, going to Perth School. Although I think that was a personal favourite, wasn't it, James, going to Perth?
We did get given wine. Yes.
No. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you.
Cool. So I just want to say I worked with James on REACT as well, and he actually turned into a presenter. Him and I think the other guy was called Matt.
Yeah.
By the end of it, they were like ant and deck together. It was really, really good.
We still haven't been offered our TV deal though. We're disappointed.
I'm sure the next REACT you'll be able to present as well. But they were really good presenting. I couldn't get over how they just gelled and how smoothly that whole event went. And you can also watch that on Marshall ADG YouTube if you want to check it out.
It's 5 hours long.
Yeah,
that's 5 hours of your life.
But you'll see Emily on there as well.
That's
Emily,
true.
who'll be presenting today. But yeah, thank you very much, James. Really appreciate it.
That's okay.